Good evening, everyone. My name is Serene Irby. I'm the president of the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento. We are here this evening for Exploring the Sacred. This is something we've been doing for 3 years now, every, I think, 5 or 6 times a year. And we are so glad you are all here with us tonight. I'm going to turn this over to David Katz, our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Serene. I also would like to welcome everyone on our Zoom tonight. These are really special evenings where we can generously listen to each other and learn about how each of us has gone on our path to understand who we are, where we came from, where we're going. Tonight's topic is faith, a life of meaning. And we have 4 panelists who will be talking to us about what that title means to them. So I'm going to now turn this meeting over to Reverend Dave Lyman to introduce our panelists. And then after Dave does that, I will introduce the topic a little bit.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everyone. And of course, this is a special night. Happy Ramadan, which starts tonight and goes until April 20th. And so I want to introduce the panelists. I was honored to go and find them. The first one is Reverend Maggie Buck, and this is a special night for her because in 9 days, she retires. And so she's finishing up her tenure.
It's a little bit more than that. It's the end of April. David.
Oh, the end of April. Okay, another month.
Yeah.
She graduated from the Holmes Institute in 2000 and has been the minister at the Foothill Center for Spiritual Awareness since 2008. And I want to read a couple paragraphs that she sent me that I absolutely love. She says, I've known God since I was a small child. At the age of 3, I saw a beautiful building and I said to my mom, what is it? My mom said, it's God's house. And I knew God and it was important to go visit him. I've been visiting daily ever since. And I love this. At 9 years old, I was leading church services in the woods of our summer cabin every year. I love my spiritual life and all the understanding. As a prayerful, faith-based person, it has healed me, guided me, and given me a huge life. I have a wonderful and great partnership with Spirit that increases every day, and my life is blessed and a blessing. Welcome, Maggie. And then we have the Reverend Dr. Portia Hopkins from the Belfry, from the Lutheran Episcopal Campus Ministry. And I love, she talks about the fact that she came to the Belfry after being a university English professor and an administrator. And her call came as a surprise to her, as it does to many ministers who find themselves suddenly as ministers. She said it's proved rich and fulfilling beyond her wildest dreams, and her experience as a teacher and a mentor. And I love this paragraph she sent. She has family of 3 adult sons and their partners, 1 perfect grandson, and a dog mom to the Belfry dog, Scout. She loves to read, write, think, take long walks and hikes, and hang out with old friends or friends she hasn't met yet. Her natural habitats are anywhere outside, especially at the beach or big trees. Who knows, maybe in some spiritual past, she's attended a Maggie Buck church service in the woods. Welcome, Dr. Hopkins. It's nice to have you here. Then we have, shall I go age or beauty? I think I'll go age first. We have Akram Kaval, who I've known for many, many years, which gives me the legitimacy to harass him terribly. He's a former board member of the Interfaith Council. and he was one of the co-founders of the Interfaith Council of Elk Grove. He was the Faith Committee Chair at Habitat for Humanity and on their board for a number of years. He was a Social Activities Director at the Muslim Community Youth Center in Elk Grove. He's a graduate of the Citizen Academy from the FBI, and he's an active member of the Salam Islamic Center and MCYC Mosque in Elk Grove. Akram never lets the mosque grow under his feet and is pound for pound the busiest man that I've ever met. Welcome, Akram. Nice to see you again. And finally, we have Manal Kaval, who might be related to Akram in one way or another. She wrote to us, I'm 25 and graduated from CSU East Bay 2020 with a bachelor's and earned my teaching credential. I teach third grade at Samuel Kennedy in the Elk Grove Unified District. I'm a first-year teacher and I'm working on my master's in education. I appreciate spending endless amounts of time surrounded by my family, playing cards and being outdoors with them. Notice the theme between the four, all about outdoors. I love experimenting in the kitchen and inviting my loved ones over to share meals. And the most interesting fact I find, she and her father Akram both have the same birthday. So they both have the birthday of December 24th. So it's the Eve birthday. So welcome Manal and welcome each of the panelists. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Well, I'd also like to extend welcome to the panelist participants and also those in our audience. My name is David Katz. I'm a retired family physician, and I'm going to be the facilitator. I'd like to make some opening remarks about our topic tonight, which is faith, a life of meaning. Now, I'm going to be very honest and sort of autobiographical myself. When I grew up, in my household, nobody talked about faith. I didn't have friends that talked about faith. I really didn't know what the word meant. And I knew there was a word, but it didn't have any content that I could identify with other than maybe people that thought things could happen that really couldn't happen. And so, you know, I would ask my friends who talked about it what they meant, and I just couldn't resonate with what they were talking about. At one time, I ran across a very wise person who described the human condition in this way. He said, we're each like blind people, and we are walking toward a goal. We can hear the music in that goal, and the music's very, very beautiful, and we're trying to get there, but we can't see where we're going. So we have two tools to help us. One is a staff, a stick to walk with, and the other is a lamp. And he said the lamp is wisdom, and the lamp illuminates around us so other people don't run into us. I mean, we're blind, so we don't know everything, but that lamp has that power to make our presence known so that we don't have accidents with other people. And then the stick is the stick of faith, or in Islam, it's called Iman, faith, certitude, and determination. And that stick does two things. Every time we take a step toward our goal, it helps prevent us from falling. But the other thing it does is when we do fall, helps us get up and get going again. So that was the first description of faith that ever made any sense to me. And I just put that out as one kind of description of faith. There is another description I found in writing, and I'm going to read it briefly, and then we'll start our discussion. This is another wisdom quote that I ran across. No matter where the sun is in the sky, if a person has a magnifying glass in his hand, he can catch its rays and make a fire. He doesn't have to worry about where the sun is. He can just use the glass to make a fire. In the same way, it doesn't matter where God is or where we are. It doesn't matter where the light of truth is, as long as a man has within himself the magnifying glass of wisdom and faith in God, he can catch the rays of the light of truth and draw them into himself or herself. And that will be of great benefit to him. So I'm not going to analyze that at all. I'm just going to leave it for what it is, what it means to each of us. And I'd like now, with great pleasure, to call on Reverend Maggie Buck to start us off in our statements that each panelist will have about what faith and the life of meaning means to them.
Thank you, David. And thank you to the Interfaith Council for asking me to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to meet new people and have the opportunity to speak what to me is my whole life, a life of faith. And what is that meaning to me? And, you know, with my introduction that Dave Lyman so graciously gave, it sounds like maybe I didn't have a life of any kind of struggle. Well, I did. I think we all do. And I think that as I've gotten older, I realized that struggle, it brings us back to faith. Yeah, there are times that I could, you know, I wished it hadn't happened. But when I can look back on it, and after the experiences of difficulty, of challenges, I find my faith is stronger. I find that there's something in me, and there's been many opportunities for me to deepen my faith, as there have been many struggles. So yes, it was great to see this church around the corner and to hear from my mother that it was God's house. But I came in knowing God, and I would be in the garden and I talked to God always outside, like in the trees and the whole thing. And so that's why I love being up here in Auburn. I started my practitioner life down in Santa Rosa, which that is in our movement, which is with CSL, which is a worldwide organization. First, the founder is Ernest Holmes, which it was Science of Mind. Now it's Centers for Spiritual Living. So everything that takes place in our life has such great value and such important to our life of faith. And so mine was going to church when my family did not go to church. And my mother, because you gave money in it, and we lived in West Oakland, and it was a very eclectic community. And so I'm pretty sure it was Southern Baptist, because I sang my heart out, and I would take my pennies wrapped in my handkerchief in the corner. If you're as old as I am, you probably remember that. And if not, that's how we carried our money. But sometimes I would get to twisting my handkerchief around, and the money would fly, and I'd have to go pick it up. But anyway, my family, I guess, had difficulty that I was going to church, and eventually they did. But I always talked about God, and so that probably bothered them too. But my mother was raised Christian Science, and so then she wanted to go to something that she was familiar with. But as in Christian Science churches, the children don't get to talk. Well, you could tell that didn't work for me, because I wanted to talk about God. And So there have been many times in my life where I didn't fit in because of my faith and because of the family that I grew up with. So I had to find my own way. And I think that's so important for each one of us is, I'm talking about approval this Sunday. And I'm realizing we don't need anybody's approval. We don't need anybody's approval to have a life beyond our wildest dreams. We don't need anyone's approval to love who you are. And you don't need anybody's approval to tell you you're doing a good job. But what you do need is your own personal approval of self. And I think that's what I've learned on this faith path, because when we're faith-based and definitely ministers, we have to keep talking about faith and discovering who God is, because we're out front doing that. And so it means constant learning and constant growing. And there were a number of times in my life, one where life got so bad that I didn't want to live anymore. And so I saw myself dying, and I told God, I'm fine. I'm not afraid to die. And so I'm just going to go to sleep. And as I made that statement, I heard, well, you have a choice. And I said, well, because I told God I was sure I didn't have a choice to be in this life. And so God said, you have a choice. And I said, I'm just tired. I'm going to go to sleep. And my husband at the time, he'd be fine. And my oldest son, he'd be fine. But then my youngest son grabbed my legs in this vision that I was given and said, Mama, don't go. And I saw him, and he was only about 7 years old. And I realized that if I left, it would leave a big hole in his life. And so God says, you get a chance, you get to choose. And I said, I choose to live. And God said, how are you going to live your life? I said, I'll live it differently. And ever since then I have. And I've lived it in pursuit of who I am, not for anybody else's approval, but for my approval in my own being, which of course is the presence of God in me. And it's been easy for me to know God, but it hasn't always been easy for me to know me and to fall in love with me as I know God loves me. So I think that this whole life is all about discovering of self and finding approval for self. So yeah, and I have enjoyed this time of being a senior minister. And I'm also going to enjoy the time of just really approving of me and taking time to not only be with me, but to discover more of who I am and who God is in me and around me. And so I think that life challenges us. And each one of these challenges either can, feel like it's just the end of the world, or we can say, I'm going to move through this because I have faith. I have faith in myself and faith in the God that lives within me. So a life of meaning. Yeah. I can say now, I'm going to be 81 next month. And it's time now to spend that time for me and the people I love. I'll still do my practitioner clients because I love that. But my life has been filled with meaning, and I'm probably going to write a book because I've talked a lot. How's my time doing, you guys? I didn't even look at the time.
You're at 7 minutes.
Oh, cool. I thought I'd gone on a lot longer. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I think you can tell all of our lives are so valuable and important, but it's really important that we approve of ourselves and that we fall in love with ourselves, because I believe that's what the spirit of life, whether you call it God or spirit or the infinite, whatever it is, whatever your faith is, because I I find something that I like in all faiths. I was president of the Interfaith Council in Sonoma County, and I loved getting to know people of different faiths, because it's the faith that everybody has that has such value, not totally what they believe, but the faith in what they believe that has the value. And that's the value in each and every one of us. And so, yeah, every one of my struggles, every one of my so-called difficulties brought me closer to who I am and closer to my own personal approval. And I see that that's the most important thing. And my intention of writing this book is to write about the sacred center of self, something I discovered years ago, that every one of us has a sacred center of ourself. It's up to us to choose to live from that place. But we don't have to if we choose not to. You know, there is no right or wrong in this life. There's only, what can I live it to? How can I live it to its fullest that is valuable and expansive for me? And the more we do that, the more it'll bless other people, because they'll see it in us. We'll be the living truth of that. And we don't have to be, answer all their questions, because we can't. They have to answer their own and find their own personal approval. But we've already been approved by God. And that's the thing that is deep in my heart, because it's like, I don't have to be anything other than I am, to the infinite, to the divine, to the beloved. And so, I'm open, willing, and ready to take your questions if you have them later after each speaker. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Maggie. That was awesome. Hello, everyone. I am Manal. And a little about me. So I am a teacher, as Dave said. I just graduated with my master's, and I am of the Muslim faith. A life with meaning. So through faith, I have found so much meaning. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, I went to a very affluent school, and I distinctly remember that none of the other kids looked like me. None of them practiced as I did. None of them spoke like I did. And so I felt like an outsider, right? And while the education was sound, I didn't have the experience of being in a community at my school, which is where I was, right? From 8 to 3 every single day. And so when I went to middle school, it was a very similar situation. However, we were learning about 9/11 in our history class. And that's when, I think that week was when it struck me that I am the outsider. I was, right? And so I remember my history teacher talking about 9/11 and the terrorists and this and that. And then there were 2 boys in my gym class who decided to sit behind me on the bleachers. And the whole class, they asked me if I was a terrorist. I mean, I'm an 11-year-old, the only brown girl in the class. They asked me if I was a terrorist on the first day, and I obviously responded no. And the next day, they asked if I was going to go home and pray 5 times a day. And I said, oh, maybe, I don't know. The next day, they asked if I was going to pray 5 times a day when I went home, or if I was going to go home and make bombs in my basement. And so these little instances really piled up on top of each other, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And I mean, I was 12, 13 years old. And what do you do? You ask your friends. And so I asked them in the locker room, what should I do? These guys are really bothering me. And their advice was not good. So I gave it another 2 days. And then I texted my mom from the locker room. It had been 2 weeks at this point that I was putting up with that. And I texted my mom and she said, I'm coming. So she marched on up with all her daycare kids in tow. She marched up to the front office and I got in trouble. The office ladies uh, were upset with me for texting during class. And that put everything into perspective in that instant. From that point forward, my parents made it a point to take me to the mosque every Friday, to put me in youth groups, to surround me with the community that I didn't even know that I needed, right? I knew that my faith was my faith. I knew I was Muslim and I believed in Allah, but I didn't know what an impact it would have in my life to be surrounded with people who were so like-minded. And after getting past the bullying and the harassment at school and fully immersing myself into the mosque and praying and being with people who looked like me, spoke like me, acted like me, and had the same morals and values that I did, I was able to have an appreciation for my faith that I didn't know existed. The appreciation that I felt was so immense and so powerful. I finally felt like my life had meaning, right? That I had a straightforward path in life. And that was faith-based. It was all, doing it the Islamic way, making my family proud of me and my parents proud of me, and at the most being a part of my community um, in every way that I could, giving back to my community, everything. So fast forward to now, I am extremely blessed to be teaching in a community that is largely Afghani refugee students. And I cannot express how much love I have for my students. They have taught me so much. And while the trauma and the pain that they have experienced coming to this country, I cannot relate to, what I can relate to is that they're Muslim, right? Like today, I did a lesson about Ramadan. And my 3 kiddos who are Muslim raised their hand when I asked, who knows what Ramadan is? None of the other kiddos did. I was able to teach a lesson which led to every single kid in the class being able to raise their hand and tell me afterwards what Ramadan was, what Muslims do during Ramadan, why it's such a special month for us. And, when we pray, when we wake up to eat, that we can't eat during when the sun's out. And seeing my Muslim kiddos in my classroom today was like a full circle moment, right? The looks on their faces was the representation they felt. I was representing my own Muslim kiddos, and that felt so powerful. From being a student, being in their shoes years ago, and a lesson like this could have led to these 3 being bullied, harassed, but I was able to take it and take the meaning and faith that I have and the confidence that I have in my own faith and my belief in God and turn it into something powerful to where these young children are so proud of their own faith. I was shocked. I did not think that that would happen today. But I didn't plan for this to happen or anything. But Ramadan starts tomorrow, and I thought no better time than now. So it was on the fly lesson, but I came home feeling extremely grateful for Islam and for my relationship with God and my community and my students. So thank you so much for having me today. And feel free to ask any questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. So for me, a faith, it actually brings a purpose in life. And I have seen, when I was serving on the board at the local mosque here in El Grove, I never, before that, I was never part of any organization. I was just, working and raising my kids. Then I got an invite. It says, hey, you want to serve as a board member? I said, sure, why not? Let me give it a shot. So I joined the mosque. I served as the social activity director for a couple of years. And what happened in those 2 years is I met some of the most incredible people at mosque. I was able to connect with the youth group, with people of my age, some elders, and I learned so much from them. And I was like, this is amazing. This gives a whole new meaning to life. You practice your faith at home and you go to the mosque and, you just like, you visit, you go to the mosque, pray and come home and that's it. But when you're actually in the mosque and you're working there or serving the community, it's a totally different level of faith. You believe in faith, it's like how much the community comes together to help each other or, give back to the community or charity or whatever. And after that, I was invited to join the Interfaith Council of Sacramento. I said, this is a great opportunity to represent my faith to other people and take that, what I've learned at the mosque, and then teach that to the other faith communities. So we started working, and I tell you, being on the board with the Interfaith Council of Sacramento and working with other people and serving the community is one of the best experiences of my life. So what happens is the faith, now I have a different perspective of faith. What does faith mean? It's not only practicing your faith, but also teaching others of our faith. Now people know about Ramadan. People know about what we do. People know we pray 5 times a day, give charity, serve the community. And we do this by educating others about our faith. If we don't do it, then who else? I mean, they're not going to go and read books. I mean, they can, but nobody's going to actually, if they're not interested, then. So it's having that personal connection with people of different faiths and teaching them, and also on the other hand, learning from them. I learned so much from the Jewish people and the Presbyterian and the Catholic and, everybody, that, wow, this is what you do and this is how we do. And I've seen so many similarities in our religion, our faith. We have more in common than we have in difference. I mean, it's amazing. I've been to so many places of worship like gurdwaras and synagogues and churches and everybody, at the end of the day, the faith is the same. The teachings are the same, pretty much. And it's all about, taking care of our community, peace, give charity, helping others, and believing in God. And with that, it keeps you on a path that you're focused on. It helps you on your work, your family, your friends. It's just, that's the meaning of, that's what I think is the meaning of the faith and the purpose of life is, you're just not living for yourself, but living for others. I mean, I can live for myself. I can just go to work, pay bills, and be happy, but that's not the real meaning of life. The real meaning comes when you help others and when you serve your community or do something that will help the next generation or teach the youngsters, the right from the wrong and stuff like that, I think that's about it for me. Am I doing okay on time or? Okay, good. So if you have any more questions about us, and if you want to, learn about more about Ramadan or fasting or what we do, how we do it, please feel free to ask away. It starts tomorrow, by the way, for 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Akram. I really appreciated a lot of what you had to say, and it resonates a lot with a lot of the things that I'm going to say. I wasn't raised in a Christian family or a family that had much religious practice at all, but I can remember being a small child and feeling connected to something that now I would describe as divine or sacred. I didn't have those words as a 2-year-old or as a 3-year-old, but I can just remember like lying on the floor in a sunny window and sort of seeing the dust motes fly over my head and thinking that it was magical or that it was special or that there was something outside of me that was living in all sorts of things. And I always loved to be outside. Even as a child, I would climb trees or just be around outdoor things. And now, again, looking back, I can recognize that as really, what I would describe as God, if I use God language, but the divine or the sacred, the something larger that's out there sort of connecting with me. The idea that there's something bigger than just myself, that there's something transcendent that I get to connect with in a variety of different ways. It's probably mostly an accident of time and place that I happen to be a Christian. In the culture that I grew up in, when I had this feeling about religion and about wanting to know more about it, the answers came from Christianity. And so that was a faith that I sort of explored and decided to commit myself to long ago when I was a teenager. And my faith has changed substantially from those early days. I think one's faith does as one grows older. It's easy to think in absolute terms when you're young. It's really hard to think in absolute terms when you're older and you understand so many more things about life. The thing that has kept me as a Christian as I have grown older and looked at other faiths and sort of seen what they have are something that really, I think, as Akram said, would be a part of every faith. The idea that we love God, and then the way that we word it in Christianity is we love God, love your neighbor as yourself. But the golden rule is in all faiths and in people of no particular faith at all. Everybody learns that even as a child. Treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Love other people as yourself. And something that one of my university students pointed out to me just last week is that means that we love ourselves in the way that we love our neighbors, which I think is something that Maggie has been saying here, that loving ourselves and knowing that we are loved is really important. And so sometimes when I'm talking to college students that may wonder if they really want to have any faith, I say, well, if God language bothers you, put love in where you would say God, because God is love. And so if you have trouble saying God is sacred or God is divine, or I'll devote myself to God, how about if you say love is sacred and love is divine and I'll devote myself to love? How does that feel? And sometimes they'll say, yeah, actually, maybe I can start thinking in that way, whether God language is something that comes to me or doesn't come to me. I think one of the things that I've grown to appreciate deeply about my particular expression of faith is the idea of grace, that grace is a gift. It is not something that we can ever earn. We don't have to do anything or be anything to be loved or to have grace. We just simply have to be ourselves. And so the journey of faith is really growing to know ourselves more and to know God more, and to sort of lean into that. One of the things that Christians will talk about that often is off-putting to other people is the idea of repentance. But when you actually understand the word repentance in the Greek, just means the word is metanoia, which could just as easily be translated into big change, great change. Meta being the idea of something that is very meta or very, very beyond. In fact, maybe the translation that I like best is a change your habit of mind. So when we repent, it doesn't have anything to do with like, oh, I'm so awful, and woe is me, and what a horrible person I am. It's just simply knowing, oh, wait, I was less than perfect in that talking to myself, in interacting with other people, in an attitude I have when I was driving on the freeway. I wasn't perfect then. And so what I want is I want to change my habits of mind. I want to continue to be in a process of ongoing rolling transformation where I grow and change and learn and listen. And because of grace, that isn't scary. I don't have to flee or hide from the things that are less than perfect about me. I can, in fact, sort of say, oh, wow, okay, I wish I had a do-over. I don't have a do-over, but next time I do, I'm going to have hopefully experienced this change in my habits of mind and be able to do better in that situation. And another thing that I appreciate about the faith is that this transformation that I undergo, that we all undergo as we sort of walk in a journey of life and practice our faith, the transformation is not, it has an end to it. It has a telos to it. It is not just that I'm transforming so that I feel better. I do feel better, but well, not every day. It can be a little up and down, but I am transforming so that I can love better, not just feel better myself, but so that I can be a better person, so that this love of God and love of neighbor can more easily and quickly and intuitively and automatically flow from me. I'm transformed to do things that I could not do without that transformation. And I'm 61, and in this point in my journey, I can look back and see so many things that has transformed and changed over in my ability to sort of to connect with other people, to love, to not be judgmental to myself and to other people. And I look forward to, however many years I have left of whatever that ongoing transformation looks like. One of the things that I will often say to a congregation or to my students is that Jesus gives us the idea of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven. And that is not like pie in the sky when you die. That is not like be good and you'll go to heaven when you die. Instead, what Jesus was talking about is transforming the here and now. As we're transformed, then the world around us transformed. If I'm more loving, then other people around me can be more loving. If I don't have to make them fearful because I can love them, then they can reduce the amount of fear that they have, and they themselves can respond in love. And so what I like to think of as the bringing of the kingdom of heaven or the bringing of the kingdom of God is narrowing the gap between the world as it should be but isn't, and the world as it actually is, so that heaven and earth sort of touch in some kind of way. And of course, we know that that is not the lived existence of every minute of every day for every person. In fact, we know there are big gaps in between the way things should be and the way that they are. But a life of meaning and of purpose that my faith gives me helps me to step in there and do everything that I can to narrow the gap and to help everybody around me live so that they also can narrow that gap between earth and heaven, and bring love in any way that I can. just like everybody else, I'm super happy to answer any questions or engage in conversations and to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you to each and all of the panelists for those inspiring words and sharings of experience. In this part of the Zoom panel, we're going to open up for questions from one panelist to another. And, you know, we're not going to be using a strict definition of questions. This is an opportunity for dialogue, for conversation. And we'll go for about, let's see, it's 7:50. We'll go for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes where we can take questions from our audience members as well. Audience members, you can put questions in the chat, and when the audience question time comes, I will read them. If you want to direct them to one or more of the panel members, you may do so, or if you would like to address the whole panel and let anyone answer the question, that's fine too. So are there any questions or conversations that our panel members would like to have with each other about what we just heard? Go ahead, Portia.
Manal, I was really touched by your story. My children are half Muslim. Their dad's Muslim and grew up brown, but fortunately also in an area with a lot of other brown people. And so it was easier, but they still encountered some of those same things that you did. And I want to know what helped you not become hateful when people were hateful to you? How did you manage that? I admire that so much.
That is a great question. I would say definitely my parents exposing me to the mosque and my own community more, but also one of the gentlemen who was harassing me wrote me a letter of apology afterwards. So he wrote in the note, he wrote to my family and I, and he wrote, "I'm so sorry that I hurt you all. I'm Mexican and I was adopted. And I've been hurt before for being adopted. I've been bullied for being adopted." And so that kind of made me realize, even though I was only 13 years old, it made me realize that, okay, everyone that's hurting me has probably been hurt before, and that's why they're doing it. There's ignorance at play and their own struggles at play. Everyone has a struggle. They're just my struggle. But that as a 13-year-old was very helpful. And then as I grew up, my parents also introduced me to other faiths, other communities, right? My dad's plays a huge part in the interfaith councils, and he does a lot for the community. He'd always bring me along wherever he went. And so I was exposed to the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, the Hindu faith, the Sikh faith from a very early age, which I think that a lot of other young people are not exposed to. And that helped me keep a very open mind and kind of realize that everyone has their own way of thinking, but at the root of it, it's all very similar. There's no reason to hate one another if we just understand one another. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Oh, thank you for answering.
Great question. Anyone else have a question for people on the panel? Well, I'd like to ask,
I do.
you do. Oh, go ahead, Akram.
Reverend Maggie, can you talk a little bit about the Interfaith Council in Santa Rosa? What was your part and how, what was your mission and goals over there to community outreach?
Yeah, it was just a very interesting time. I also found some prejudice in it because I was a
Ah.
woman minister. And which, and yet there was a great deal of we did a lot of things. We worked together on different projects, and we got to know each other. The people that had a difficulty with me being a spiritual leader as a woman, they kind of fell away. And so that was really present during that time. And I loved it. I loved getting to know their different beliefs, and found it's the same as all of you have said in this panel, how it is our faith that brings us together, and yeah, we do things maybe differently, but it's the base of our faith that guides us through everything. And so that was quite a while ago, though. That was like, what, now it's 18 years ago. So, yeah. But it was interesting to find the prejudice in that. Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you, Reverend Maggie.
Thank you.
Akram, I wanted to ask you a question because I've heard now 3 descriptions of you as a whirlwind in the community of interfaith. And so I just wondered what experiences in your early life got you oriented in that way and give you the strength to do that.
I was exposed to different faiths at a very early age. I was born and raised in Ethiopia. And over there, my dad was also very involved and had friends from different faiths. And we used to go visit their places of worship, and they used to come to our place of worship. We celebrated their, like Christmas or whatever faith events where we used to take part in all the faith celebrations with every faith in Ethiopia. And I thought that was just part of normal life. You go to the church, they come to our house for Eid or Ramadan and stuff like that. Until I came here, I didn't know it was called interfaith. So now I know there's a name for it, but back then it was just part of life, So when I came here, I got busy. I didn't really do any much with the interfaith, but I was busy, working, raising kids. And then I got involved in the mosque and then the Interfaith Council, and here we are. So that's how we got started.
Very interesting. I'm inspired by all the work that you've done, and now I know a little bit about it. For those of you that may not be familiar with the history of the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento, I saw a few years ago a newspaper article about the founding of the Interfaith Council, which was a revolutionary concept at the time. I believe it was in the 1920s, of Catholic Christians sitting down at a table with Protestant Christians. That was the whole amazing, unlikely, miraculous thing was for them to be able to talk to each other. And so this is how far we've come now, with being able to find that center within each person of any faith background that has that commonality. They were they were searching for that too back then and didn't quite have as wide a perspective as we have now.
Yeah, it started back, if I remember right, it started back in 1911. The Interfaith Council of Sacramento, 1911. And here we are 112 years later.
I think it might be the oldest interfaith council in the United States. I've never
Probably.
really won that.
But I wish we had some kind of history or somebody had written books or how it all.
Yeah, I heard it was in some boxes in somebody's garage.
Yeah,
Well, I just want to say that it's just been such a pleasure to be included in this group. I've enjoyed each and every one of you and all that you've said, and thank you for reminding me too of the Interfaith Council, because all of a sudden all of these things are percolating up in my mind, and to see the Jewish rabbi and the what was she? She was a monk speaking and on forgiveness and what it was just lovely. The people that were at the Interfaith Council, we go to different people's different centers, and you learn so much, and you ask questions, and it was really a great opportunity. So this is just really, thank you so much. I've enjoyed each and every one of you and listening to you.
One of the experiences that taught me a lot was when I was a young physician and I would have to take the calls from home at night. It relates to our interfaith work, because I would be asleep and I would have to sleep with the beeper next to my bed, and it would go off. And as I woke up, I had this feeling of unfairness and my thoughts about, well, this person's probably doesn't really need to talk to a doctor now. And why are they calling me? I haven't had enough sleep tonight, and I didn't have enough sleep last night. And then I would pick up the receiver and hear the voice and feel all of that melt away. It just melted away as I started to hear what this person, this person had a child with a fever and the child couldn't sleep and they didn't know what to do. And we had to decide, should they take the child to the emergency room or just give them Tylenol and we would go, but I noticed the change in me when there was a human heart-to-heart contact, which when I was by myself, I could indulge in all these ideas of how I deserve sleep and these people don't understand what my life is like and all that sort of thing. And I think that's a little bit like what we do in Interfaith. So we make up reasons to get together. And as we get together, we become aware that we have so much in common. We have everything about being human in common. That we do, our bodies work the same, our families, our places of worship, our schools, our schools. And then all that sort of thing just sort of melts away where we're thinking, oh, they're different. They don't really, they're not fair. They just want to get this or that. And, they don't work hard or they work extra hard and they get more than we do, and all sorts of crazy things. But when you're actually with the person, you can't think like that because they're not actually like the way you were thinking. So I like to use that as my own personal paradigm of what interfaith is about. It has a purpose of getting people together, and then the divinity in each one of us makes that those separations and prejudices melt away as we start, if you have a meal with somebody, they bring the food they brought and you bring the food you brought. I mean, they're feeding you. How much closer can you get? So, yeah, I just thought I'd share that. Anyone else have a question for one of the panelists. We're getting close to the time where we're going to open this up to the general audience. Do any of the panelists want to add anything more?
I have a question for any of the other panelists. What are some openings that you use to engage in interfaith conversations? What are some things that you found sort of help other people relax and open up? Food, David mentioned food always works, but what are some other ways that you have used to connect with other people?
Well, I think just asking, what do you believe about certain things that, and tell me more, and how does that affect you? Just these questions of yeah, tell me more. I remember the LDS community was just so giving and so kind and caring, and when I had a physical challenge, they asked if they could come and pray over me. And I absolutely, I'm never going to stop somebody from praying. And it was just so delightful. And of course, they pray differently than I do, but it's the faith behind the words. It's the faith of their heart that you really get. And listening to the questions that different people had for each other. It helps us to be more open, receptive, and available to people of other faiths and other beliefs. And yet, you've all said this, we're back to the same thing. The core of it is all the same. And our faith takes different paths, but it's not just one path. I think it is, and the more we see that, the better it is for us.
And if I can add to that is, that when we show interest in other people's faith and their culture and their and they will show interest in ours, and that's the icebreaker. I would like to learn more about your faith and what you do and how you do it, and they'll say, okay, this is how we do it, and tell me more about yours, and that starts a conversation. And the other thing is, I always take the first initiative to invite them over to our mosque, like for Ramadan, Iftar, or whatever it is, so they can learn about more. And then in return, yesterday I was at the Baha'i Nowruz celebration at the Baha'i community of El Grove. In December, we were at the Jewish New Year Hanukkah celebration. So it's like, it's amazing, and I love participating in everybody's festivities, and the food is great too.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. One is, well, here's an interesting one from Dave Lyman. For Portia and Manal, can you speak to the difference of what faith means to the young today and the difference from our view of faith? In other words, is there some other way of looking at faith that young people are having today, or how is it the same or different from what some of us who are older see it as? So Manal or Portia, you want
I
to?
think a lot of what I see in the young people that I work with is that faith is often very separated from religion for them. They often, and I'm being super general here, right? Like everybody has their own story, but oftentimes they have wounds from religion, and religion has not been kind to them in a variety of different ways. And they are exploring whether they can have faith in something. And so some, pretty substantial chunk of the younger millennials and Gen Z population identify as spiritual but not religious. They will see themselves as spiritual, and faith is important, and practices are an important part of their life, and love and connection and all those sorts of things that are very faith oriented. But actually being a part of a religion or committing to a religious tradition is often something that they've been sort of burned by and are often shy away from.
I would have to echo exactly what Portia said. When I think of young people, I think of my students, and then, obviously you might have met my generation. So I, when I look at my students, I take the poll in class. How many of you go to church? How many of you go to the mosque? How many? And almost everyone's hands go up. So they are exposed to religion at a young age, as I was. But clearly, throughout the years, as they grow older, as my generation grew up, there was a disconnect somewhere. Whether they were hurt by the faith, which, like Portia said, is usually the case, and they found solace in friends or people outside of that faith community, and they just kept getting more and more separated from that community. It's almost the opposite of what I experienced, right? I was hurt in my school community, and then I found solace in my faith community, and that's what brought me closer. A lot of people in my generation, I feel like, are going in the opposite direction. They think that each religion, each faith is hard and fast. There's rules to it. It's not flexible, when the truth is it's what you make of it, right? It's what you believe. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you, both of you. I think and there's another suggestion for a way to talk about this. Dave suggested that the panelists share a faith moment in your life when the light of logic and reason maybe failed to be helpful and faith still held fast. I see some recognition. Does anyone want to talk on that point?
Well, I will. I had a number of times that I was so distraught. One of the biggest ones was when I quit smoking. I used to smoke two packs in a day. And so I was a very heavy smoker, and I finally realized, I said, well, someday I'll have to quit. And I also used to dive for abalone on the coastline, and I love to dance. I'm a dancer, and I couldn't dance anymore. I couldn't go deep in the dive anymore. And so that suddenly came to me that it was time to quit, and Spirit said, it's time for you to quit. And at that time, there wasn't anything about nicotine, whatever they had. And so I did that hypnosis that people were talking about. And people came in to where I was working, and they said they were, went to the hypnosis on not smoking. So I went, but it got so difficult that I knew I could never have another cigarette again. And that if I did, I would die. I mean, I'm very dramatic, as you can probably tell. But anyway, so I'll never forget this time that I just couldn't do it. It took all my willpower. It took everything I had. And at this moment, in that very moment when I said, God, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And it was the first time I ever really got down on my knees and said, okay, God, I need help. And in that moment, something I could feel it today. This energy that filled me up. And I knew that with God, I could do it. I knew it. And it was it was a reassurance. It was amazing. There've been other times like that, but it was the biggest thing for me to really be washed in the love of God and to feel the support. And I've never had another cigarette. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone else?
So I often tell people I have a pig with wings that happens to be sitting on my desk here at work. And I often tell people that it's just about as likely that I'd be a priest as that pigs would ever fly. It was not something that I ever felt like I was called to. In fact, 10 or 12 years or so ago, I thought I'd given up on church. I would have been one of those spiritual but not religious people, because the church just seemed like it wasn't working for me. I wasn't Episcopalian at the time. And so for me to sort of somehow I accidentally stumble into the Episcopal Church, it was because I went to a midnight mass at Bath Abbey on Christmas Eve back in like 2010, and I thought it was beautiful. And so I thought, oh, maybe if church was like this, maybe I could do this, and ended up sort of like attending an Episcopal church and had a call to ministry before I was even sort of settled or confirmed as an Episcopalian. So this is not a likely thing for me. It would have been likely for me to stay as a college professor. And so it's one of those things that I can't say made any sense. It wasn't like I sat down and wrote a list of why it's really a good idea for me to go back to school and get another degree and study for ages and go through a lengthy ordination process to not even really want the job I was going to get at the end of it. And yet I couldn't not do it. I felt compelled to keep on stepping in the direction. That was something, just step after step after step. And of course, by the time I actually ended up getting to be a campus minister and sort of combine my love of college students and my love of learning and the faith as I've come to know it, I'm a very happy pig with wings now.
Portia, can you think back and share with us what hard experience you had in the Bath Abbey?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had been sort of only acculturated in sort of basic American storefronty churches, right? Very stripped down Baptisty sorts of things, right? So there was not a lot of beauty, visual beauty, or value for aesthetics, or really lovely sacred music in the traditions that I was a part of. And I just had never had that experience. And so I was in England with two of my kids, and it was Christmas Eve. And I told them, hey, all I really want for Christmas is come to Christmas Eve Mass with me. They aren't religious at all. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll do this. And they didn't have the same experience that I did. They were like, well, that was okay, but we would have rather been sleeping or whatever else. But the being in a beautiful Abbey setting where I knew that literally generations of workers had dedicated their whole lives to making that space beautiful in honor of the way that they felt about God. We don't do that anymore. Boy, if somebody gives a half an hour to something, we go, yay. Nobody gives like generation after generation after generation of bricklayer and mason and carver and woodworker, all to create these things. And so the visual beauty of that, the same thing with the music, hearing a boys choir, that these, young people spent hours and hours and hours practicing to make this beautiful music. And then a liturgy that sort of held me in that. And so I just experienced a feeling of the sacred in a way that I hadn't in a church setting. I had in nature, but I hadn't in a church setting before.
Yeah, that reminds me, whenever I travel, I go to these old cathedrals, and I don't care what religion it is. If you walk in there, I can feel the essence of prayer and in that room, and the statues and whatever else is part of that religion. It just warms my heart. It lifts my soul. But you can just sit there, and it's the same feeling I get like out in nature, because you can. It's feeling, it's palatable, it's palatable, and it's delicious. And so, yeah, I'm always visiting churches.
Thank you both. see if there are any more questions. No more questions right now. I mean, I can share a personal experience of new understanding of faith. About 6 months ago, I was hospitalized with complications of COVID. And as part of the treatment, I had to have blood clots taken out of my lungs. They took me down to the catheter lab in the hospital, but then they were afraid to put me to sleep because my heart was getting weakened by these blood clots. And so I had to lie on this table with a drape, which is kind of like a bed sheet, or you could think of it as a shroud, for 3.5 hours awake while they put this catheter up through from my leg up into my heart, into my lungs. I couldn't move. I could talk to the people, but I couldn't see them. And basically, I suddenly understood what it was to be alone with your maker. I mean, there was really no one else there. And realized that that you will never be alone. You know, you will never be alone. Wherever you are, the light shines on you. And if you just look up, open your eyes, you see that light. And it's always there for you. And you realize that is the realization that we've come to this world for. We came, we're here. What do we have to know so that we can complete this university and get our degree and move on? And so that was my personal, that was a long time, 3.5 hours to just sit still with no visual and very few auditory inputs and just experience being alive. And that, what a gift that was. And what am I to do with that? So yeah, I'm glad to have the opportunity to share that with as many people as I can. Before I forget, I want to make sure that for everyone celebrating Ramadan, that we wish you Ramadan Mubarak, and that closeness to God comes at this time for each of you and for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Does anyone have anything else they would like to share? This is sort of, we're on eternal time, so we don't have to stop at a certain, you know, if we're done, we're done. But I don't want to cut anyone off either.
I think we're good.
Well, it's my hope and prayer that each of us will go out into the community after sharing this evening and share that this kind of sharing is possible. The world doesn't see, and our communities don't see this enough. It will be recorded. It is recorded, and we'll make sure that you have access to the recording if you want to share it with any friends, family, or people in your congregation. And I think it might be appropriate to end with a prayer. So I'd like, before we say goodbye, to ask our sponsor, Dave Lyman, would you be willing to give us a a closing prayer?
I would be honored to. So everybody take a breath. It seems in this modern world, we've come to a place where each of us deepen our own personal relationship with God or Allah or Shalom, whatever that is. And so tonight we say, sweet spirit in our lives, we are blessed. What an honor and blessing to be able to look into each other's eyes and remember who we are. To have that divine that we are expressed through us in all that we do. And to be on this journey with you, sweet spirit. As Maya Angelou once said, there are no problems bigger than God. And so no matter what happens in our lives, we give thanks for the fact that we are not alone, ever, ever, ever. And if we forget, we only need to look into a set of eyes. Thank you for this evening, for all the hard work of the people behind the scenes that have put this on, for the people that have come tonight, for the people who will see it in the future, and for each of our panelists sharing their hearts tonight. And we say, Amen.
I mean, and Serene, thanks so much for hosting. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you very much. This was great fun, you guys. Thank you. Great to meet all of you.
Hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really good to hear from everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.